tell us why he's been voting since he was 18. I get it. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look in your community, if I'm in Jackson, Mississippi, I'm like, I can't bathe? What? I've been voting, and what? The government's not coming in to rescue me, but you could send money over to Ukraine. Like, you know, like the arguments are salient and they're not off base. I get what he's saying. What do you say to somebody that says, I've been voting my whole entire life and I don't see any reason to do it anymore?
I mean, I live in Florida. Most of the Black folks who vote in Florida still don't end up winning. So you could be voting, but the Republicans still win. So you look up and you say, well, my neighborhood doesn't look any different. Yeah, but did your vote actually win? Did you get gerrymandered out of power? Did you vote for people who actually stand for your community? Right? Because one of the things that I found about Southern politicians is a lot of them are just happy to be in power. They don't really stand up. They don't ruffle feathers. They don't challenge status quo. They don't go against the grain.
You agree with Mark in Florida?
I agree that voting alone ain't gonna get you much, especially if your vote has been watered down and distilled to the point where it has no impact.
Why should he show up? Why should he show up this time?
Because there is a clarity that comes when you actually start losing stuff. See, the problem is we think that voting is about gaining stuff, and that's not always the case, right? Sometimes voting is about not losing stuff, right? Or changing stuff, or stuff not getting changed for the worse, right? So if I am being beaten at the whipping post, right? And the most that can happen is to stop somebody from beating me, that's still a worthy cause, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to get to the free and happy and doing well until I get the beatings to stop. So if somebody comes up to me and says, if in an election, somebody says, I won't beat you, and somebody says, I will beat you, it's ridiculous to say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for either one of these because none of these people are telling me they're going to do well for me. Right. So what you're not recognizing, what our listener is not recognizing, is that the people by abstaining from the process, he's empowering the person with the whip. And that whip is coming for you. And you gotta understand that they're actually literally admitting and stating that they're bringing that whip for you. So to say, I'm just not going to vote because the person that I trusted or that I believed in or that I wanted to do well for me didn't do well enough for me. The party that I wanted to do well for me didn't do enough for me. Okay, but were they the minimum protection from the one that wanted to take your head off? Because see, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with one party that actually puts Black people on the court, one party that actually holds officers accountable, one party that actually puts money into the Black community, one party that actually forgives student loans, and another that's like, hey, we're coming for you. And if you don't understand the rhetoric that they use, then maybe you don't understand the rhetoric that they use. But they're not looking to, it's not like both parties are doing us bad. Right? One party is literally shielding us from what the other party wants to do. And what they want to do is take us back to Jim Crow, not 2.0, Jim Crow on crack, Jim Crow on steroids. Right. So, and
you didn't even bring up reproductive rights, which Mark may not care about. But
I doubt that he cares about that, because the way he spoke made me think that he's very self-focused. Right. He's not community focused.
Right. So let me ask him, since we haven't, Mark, any of this resonate with you?
I'd like to respond to those comments, please.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. First, I want to respond to the comment you made, Karen. First of all, we have to ask the question, okay, Mark, you've been voting since you was 18, you're now 52, and you say you're not going to vote. We have to address the problem of, I've been voting Democrat without ever putting any thought into what I was doing.
Right.
And how did I get that? I got that concept from the people I was around that, like, no, you just vote Democrat because you're Black. No, you have to make these people accountable.
So stop. You're new to the show. I launched the Party of Lincoln, getting Black people to vote Republican in 2014 to stop Trump from getting the primary, because I saw it was 2015 actually. Getting a primary, because I was like, he can win if he gets the primary. If he makes it through the primary, he can win. So I was like, Black folk in these states that are closed primary, like we gave a civics lesson, launched a whole app in 2015. You're new to the show, to give people the marching orders. I got cussed out on these airwaves by people who were like, I can't vote Republican. I was like, it's strategy. It's not I'm not telling you to vote against your mama. I'm saying in the state that you're in, your Democratic vote has no weight. Vote in a closed primary, change your voter registration, vote for this Republican. Let's vote for somebody who can't win. At the time, it was Jeb Bush, because I knew he couldn't beat Hillary, because they have the same problem and people were not going to show up for him. He dropped out early and I was like, Kasich, he can't beat Hillary. I said, Trump could beat Hillary. And everyone was cussing me out. I was right. So yes, Mark, to your point, people say vote Democrat, vote blue, no matter who. That for 20, 30 years didn't matter. It matters now. It matters now because the Republican Party has decided it is going to be open white nationalists, white terrorists, and they don't give a damn. They're going to misinform and they don't care about you, me, or anybody else but power. And so now, unfortunately, we're at a place where there's a binary choice. Or actually, there are three choices. You can vote Republican, Democrat, or sit home. But sitting home is voting Republican at this point.
Right.
So go ahead. And Mark, be pithy because we got a lot of things to cover. So go ahead, finish.
Well, quickly, I want to just say thank you for having me on this show. I really enjoyed this conversation, but I disagree with the way that the ladies say that how I feel. That's not true. You can't make that assumption until you ask the questions. You ask questions, and then you can find out exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. But I do appreciate the show. One quick comment on mental health. Y'all really do need to take mental health seriously. As an RN, I can tell you, they don't take it seriously. They don't take it seriously for the workers, and they certainly don't take it seriously for the patients. Keep doing your good job. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right. Welcome to the family. Thank you, Mark. And he's absolutely right. We're in some strange times, Pam Keith.
And I understand him stating that he has his reasons. Everybody has reasons, and they're going to be good reasons to them, or they wouldn't have them, right? But because I'm not assuming the man is stupid, he has his reasons. But what I will say is that if you're voting and you're not getting a result, then ask yourself, well, who does get results with their vote? Who does? Who gets results with their actions? Well, corporations get results with their actions.
Come on.
I wonder why. Well, let me tell you something. Corporations don't just give their money to candidates. They don't just show up in front of offices. What they do is they write legislation and show up in your office and say, if you don't support this legislation, I'm going to make your life a living hell. Right? Why is it that wealthy people have such an outsized say in our politics? Because they control the people. Right. So when we vote, we don't end up controlling. We vote and then they disappear and we disappear. And then for the next 2 years, we don't know what they're doing and they really don't care what we think because they're not seeing us. There is a truism about politics, which is that politics is all about what's in your face. It's all about presence. It's all about who the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but the shouting wheel is the one that gets the most attention. So, we talk about how unfair it is that Ukraine is getting all this money. Well, we may be comparing apples and oranges there, but trust and believe that Russia gets our attention. Black people don't get the attention on the Hill that Russia does, right? But then again, Black people don't get the attention that Elon Musk does. Black people don't get the attention that the LGBTQ community, and I love my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, but we don't get that attention. We don't get the attention that the Jewish community gets. Why? Because we don't show up in the same way. We vote, but then after the vote, we dissipate, and we don't have clear, concise lobbying on what we want done once we do vote. There is no Black people's lobbying firm. There's no K Street lobbyists.
Why not? Why not?
Because we work from the incorrect assumption that the people we elect are supposed to represent.
Why don't we know that? Come on, Pam Keith. What organization should be responsible for making sure there's a think tank, that there's a lobby?
The NAACP is not a Black Federalist Society. It's not.
Jesus, why not?
Because
it should have evolved.
Because we have been unsophisticated in how we play this game, right? We have played this game in
Right.
a 1972 model for all this time, and the game has evolved. So if we want policy that truly affects the Black community, then we need a lobbying firm that writes that policy, because elected officials don't, unless you Elizabeth Warren or Katie Porter, you ain't writing policy. You sign off on the policy written for you, either by your staff, but more importantly by lobbyists and corporate entities and all these external entities. They come to you with statutes, they come to you with legislation, and they start to whip who's going to say yes and who's going to say no, right? Most elected officials are too lazy to write legislation. Writing legislation is work, right?
Yes.
They're not trying to
Yes.
do all of that. So when Big Sugar wants something on the Hill, do you think they go to their people and say, oh, we want X, Y, and Z? No, they don't. They come up with a piece of legislation. They've fully written, fully vetted. They put it in front of them and say, if you don't vote for this, we're going to put $1 million into your opponent's coffers. That's how they get what they want. We play some games better than any other group on this planet, but there are some games we have never figured out how to play. And
So if
politics
we play politics the way we play basketball and tennis,
amen. It would,
come.
because we run it. Black people decide what is cool in America, what is funny in America, what is fashionable in America. We are the cultural setting of America. If we don't think it's cool, it's not cool. When we decided K-pop was cool, it became cool. That's how they appropriated our music to be cool. Right? We decide, there are things that we run and we regulate like no other, but politics is not one of those things, because we play in an unsophisticated way. So we get disappointed by our elected officials rather than understanding that they are exactly who we allow them to be.
I just want to sit with that. You just reframed everything. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a $100 million question. CEO of Center for Employment Justice, can that be turned into a lobbyist firm?
I mean, sure, we could
how?
open a lobbying division. We
Okay.
represent.
What does that look like? What do you need for that, Pam Keith? What do you need that?
So first of all, you would just need obviously a little seed money, not a whole lot, but you would need one or two people whose principal job is to be a registered agent, right? So you have to be a registered agent.
What does that mean?
Registered agent, that you have to put, there's paperwork that you put in to identify yourself as lobbying on behalf of some entity, a country, a corporation, or whatever. So that when Congress members talk to you, they know that they are talking to an agent of some entity, right? And there are lobbyists for every kind of issue out there, right? But there, as far as I know, there is no lobby for the Black people, because supposedly Benny Thompson is supposed to be the lobbyist for the Black people,
Who?
or
right.
Sheila Jackson Lee. They're supposed to be the ones.
No. But you're saying, oh, you're making me, y'all, we have been playing not the right game at all. So Pam Keith is here setting the table for us, right? So if Derek Johnson, the head of the NAACP, which I think the last thing they did significantly, besides, I think they do some things, burying the N-word might be the last thing. And it was not on his watch, so I'm not going to hold him accountable for that. Could they, or are they a registered?
No,
could they create one? Okay, so they can't do it. Okay,
no, because they're 501c3. They're a different tax status.
Okay.
So to have a lobbyist, really, you would have an entity, and you would have different groups around the country fund this entity, and they would say, okay, my job is to go up to Ayanna Pressley and make time on the schedule for Nancy Pelosi and say, I want this piece of legislation, and I start whipping that. Whipping legislation means taking people to lunch, taking them to dinner, showing up at their house, showing up in their districts, moving the pastors in their districts. It means moving people, like think about what like Moms Demand does. What does Moms Demand do? Right. Well, they have a grassroots organization, but they're also supported by a lobbying function. Right. And
now, wait, pause. So Black Lives Matter could have been a very effective.
Could have been.
But now it's been
short of the lobbying component. So what it did was we are damn good at grassroots organizing. Black people got grassroots organizing. Black Lives Matter, Black Voters Matter. We got grassroots organizing to a T. But what we don't have is an actual in-your-face lobbying function, and we don't have an actual Federalist Society incubator system. We don't have a think tank system, right? There are more right-wing think tanks than you could throw a rock at on the Hill. They take apart every component, foreign policy, national policy, energy policy, everything. They got a different right-wing think tank for every issue. We don't have any Black think tanks, let alone one that is for healthcare or Black education or Black, business, entrepreneurship or cannabis business. We could have lobbyists or think tanks that specifically develop ideas. Federalist Society does not develop ideas. Federalist Society develops people. And the way it does it is by
they gave
having
us
chapters all over the country at the college, graduate schools, law schools, all have these Federalist Society chapters. We have AKAs, they have Federalist Society. And Federalist Society grooms people and prepares people and builds networks for people to go into government and to go into positions of power, be it judiciary and so on and so forth. They groom people for that purpose. Do we have something that grooms people for that purpose? No, we do not. So what happens is we still get people in the judiciary. We still get people like, let's not forget that we have a Black woman on the Supreme Court because of the Mr. Marcus not voting. Glad you voted at least enough to get us a Black woman on the Supreme Court, right? But have we actually created an umbrella organization for the express purpose of developing, grooming, and preparing Black people to be judges and prosecutors and public defenders? No, we do not. My question is, pourquoi pas, right? Why not? And the answer is, we as Black people do not play this political game in a sophisticated way. We are transactional. It's all about the next election. And that's true about Democrats generally, and it is particularly true about Black Democrats.
866-801-TALK. Pam Keith has entered the building. She has arrived with all of the flames behind her. As you're talking, I have a space called Nubia. I think we can create a couple of think tanks in there, several thousand people from all over the globe to put together. So let me go back. Civics 101. Pam Keith is here. What does a think tank do?
It takes an issue or an area of scholarship, and it does deep thinking in that thing. So for example, we have foreign policy think tanks. We have a think tank that only focuses on Russo-US relations, and it literally hires people to study, research, and write and think about the relationship between Russia and the United States. And all of their people are full-time people, or even the, part-time people. They spend their time going to Russia, meeting Russians, meeting Russian scholars, looking at Russian history, diving into things. And so they start to formulate what policy should be based on a body of scholarship, right? Of deep thinking on an issue. So let's say for our community, we wanted to take up the issue of Black maternal fetal mortality, right? And how it's such a high issue in our community, how Black women, when they get pregnant, it's so much worse for them. So you would put together a think tank, meaning you would put together physicians, OBGYNs, hospital administrators, clergy, mothers, doulas, RNs, young people who are teen moms, people who deal with health policy and insurance experts and so forth. And they would start to pick apart all of the pieces that are causing these high rates of maternal fetal health issues. And then they would start to do scholarship on it, write white papers. And then those white papers get sent to the people on the Hill who are legislating. So what happens is that a lobbying firm will take a white paper from a think tank and say, this justifies why we need these things to change these problems. So you have lobbying firms out there that lobby on something like gun control, right? Or on something like climate change. They take these think tank white papers, they take these think tank products and then create legislation and then lobby Congress on that legislation. So where we are is we vote and we say, what y'all gonna do for us? I'm sorry.
with no strike. We've been talking about this. Eldroy Williams, Lori Daniel Favors. We're the only group of people that don't have an ask, and then we complain about not getting anything, or my vote doesn't matter. What did you ask for? The caller in Florida, nothing. What did you get? Nothing. That's how that works. Well, the gays and the white and the women and this and that, and well, they had an agenda. They wanted gay marriage, and they lobbied for it, and they got it right. What has been our lobbying? Right. You just made it really crystal clear. And I'm today years old. I don't know why I didn't think about this before. We don't have a lobbying arm. We don't have a think tank. And it makes it really difficult because there's outside of the Crown Act, which Adjoa Asamoah literally went around the country gathering lawmakers and state by state. But that's not a federal law. So if you're Black in the country federally, you can't wear your hair as it grows out of your head.
That would be an amendment to Title VII. So one of the things that's my pet peeve is the Civil Rights Act of 1967 needs to be modernized. And we can make common cause with our LGBTQIA brothers and sisters to get a component of protections for them in the Civil Rights Act, because we need allies to get our agenda across the table. We need allies. And if we say, hey, let's open Title VII for the modernization that needs to take place for Black people, and by opening up the statute, we make room for the LGBTQIA community, we make room for other groups to come in. And so now they have an interest, they bring their resources and their lobbying and their money to opening up that statute for revisit, which it desperately needs. Because the problem with Title VII, the statute that protects the one that I work with the most frequently, I'm a lawyer who represents Black people in the workplace. I represent whistleblowers, women and minorities in the workplace. So I do civil rights as applied to employment. The thing is that the case law is based in 1972 discrimination and what that looked like. It doesn't look like today the way it did in 1972, because employers are more sophisticated than they used to be. They don't allow the noose in the workplace, but they do allow Black people to be paid 60 cents on the dollar. That they do allow. So we have to have more sophisticated language in that statute to address how racism looks today and feels today and is experienced today. But we're not out there asking for an opening of Title VII, which we ought to be, and which we should have a think tank to say we need to reopen the statute. You talk about criminal justice reform. Do you know the single most important component of criminal justice reform? And it got nothing to do with police. It's about reforming and rewriting the criminal code. There is a model penal code at the federal level on which all states model their statutes as to what is and what's criminal, what's not criminal, and at what level. It was written originally in the 1920s, right? And it's been modified a little bit here and they took care of that, but they've never rewritten it. And it has a completely white-centric, male-centric, rich-centric assumption set. Right. So one of the things that I've been desperately trying to get through my little Twitter to get Kamala Harris to take on, because she'd be the perfect person to take it on, is a blue ribbon panel to rewrite the model penal code, to rewrite the federal code from soup to nuts. And this time you put in returning citizens in that panel. You put law enforcement in that panel. You put preachers and social workers and psychologists, and you start to truly call out what is a crime of intent, what is a crime, what is an artifact of poverty? What is an artifact of mental illness? And you start to really relook at why we put people in jail in the first place, because police are going to keep finding more crime in the Black community because it's more
it's easy pickings. It's slim pickings. It's why, it's easy pickings.
So
is why,
what's illegal and why. We talk about criminal, cannabis justice, but cannabis is just one thing. There are so many other things that we criminalize that we don't need to criminalize. Right. And there's a whole cottage industry and ecosystem around that.
Like they can pull you over for having an air freshener, but it's at their discretion who they pull over for having an air freshener on the rearview mirror. They could pull you over for decals, but it's at their discretion. But if all of that's in the penal code, it gives them the latitude to pull you over. And who are they targeting? Exactly. 866-801-8255. I know, and thank you, Nick, for this, that there's a tax code shift changing the 501(c) status, allowing for there to be more political activism. And I know that Derek Johnson, thanks to Nick, and I read the article really quickly while Pam was talking, the NAACP is leading into that. So there could be more opportunity for our organizations to get involved in the exact thing that you're saying. But we, the people, and you brought up sororities and fraternities. What if each of them, and I've said this before, tackle one issue? The Qs could be in charge of criminal justice reform because, you know, they out there, they wild. You know what I'm saying? The Qs, my daddy was a Q. You know, the alphas could be education reform. Do you know what I'm saying? The sigmas could be medical, you know, that looking at medical justice for Black people. Each sorority and fraternity can take an issue, and they have lawyers because, you know, they're professional organizations among them, and each tackle one thing. And we got Divine Nine. We got 10 of the, you know, there's 10 organizations that can lean into something. And now we have lobbyists, right, that will deploy and take that legislation and beat it like a drum. And they got the numbers. There are millions of Divine Nine. I've been saying this from day one on these airwaves that could be activated tomorrow.